Good afternoon. Welcome to the Sam Lacrosse Show. Happy Monday. On April 9th, 2024, Tucker Carlson conducted an interview with a Palestinian priest named Munther Isaac. Isaac, an evangelical Lutheran pastor who had spent his life as a dedicated theologian, was one of the very few Christian voices that people had heard from in the Middle East after the horrifying events of the October 7th attacks and the bombardment of Gaza from the Israeli government that happened afterwards. Being that our primary focus of the Middle East has been on Jews and Muslims, this was understandable. But yet no one had even cared to ask, what are the Christians in the region? No one seems to ask these questions when it comes to foreign wars, particularly in that region of the world. When we invaded Iraq in 2003, for example, there were 1.5 million Christians that lived in the country under the reign of Saddam Hussein. Hussein, a demonic and evil man who remains one of the great monsters of our time, was at least decent and smart enough, mind you, to not directly persecute the Christians in his land. He may not have liked them, and I bet that he didn't. But yet, in Iraq, they were safe. Until the United States came to town, foolishly, in the greatest foreign policy error America has ever committed, America overthrew Saddam's government. In our hubris, we thought this was a good thing. Women can wear bikinis. Gay people won't get thrown off roofs. We can put McDonald's in Baghdad. All good things for various different reasons in a vacuum, and almost everyone in principle agreed with them. Except for the Christians. Saddam Hussein, for all of his monstrous deeds, had enough respect for Iraqi Christians to not go after them politically. For all the names you could call him, and there are many names you can call Saddam Hussein, he wasn't a jihadist who wanted to persecute Christians. But this all changed when the people who replaced Saddam Hussein took power. Because power, as the old saying goes, abhors a vacuum. Someone will fill it. And inconvenient for all who ignore this truth, they will not take your thoughts into consideration about how they conduct their business once inside of power. The organization that filled the Iraqi power vacuum after the regime change conducted by the U.S. government of Saddam Hussein was the ISIS Caliphate. ISIS, actual radical jihadists who viewed all Christians as bastardized infidels, waged a very quiet war on Iraqi Christians. No one reported on this at all. Currently, estimates are that, due to them fleeing the country or being persecuted and killed for their faith, only 150,000 Christians remain in Iraq today, a 10x decrease from at the height of Hussein's power, whom everyone in our neocon media complex labeled as this generation's latest quote-unquote new Hitler. When analyzed across all world conflicts, this is the quiet part of all of them that no one likes to say out loud. When society descends into chaos, no matter where that chaos is, it is Christians, always, that pay the highest price. In Ukraine, for example, the current government, also installed by our government, waged a war against the Orthodox Church, the second largest denomination in the country, for being quote-unquote too aligned with the Russian government. Churches were shut down. Religious leaders were thrown into prison. On a stage at the Republican presidential primary debate in 2023, the only person to say something about this was Vivek Ramaswamy, a Hindu. All of the other quote-unquote Christians on stage, ranging from Chris Christie to Ron DeSantis to Nikki Haley, all had nothing to say. Point to any other part of the world in turmoil, and this is always the same trend. South Africa, Nigeria, Armenia, Myanmar, Syria, wherever. Political instability disproportionately harms Christians. This is not at all to say that Jews, Muslims, Hindus, or any other group are not harmed. They are, and it's terrible that they are. But yet the fact of the matter is that Christian persecution is never discussed with the concern or depth needed as other world religions. This is wrong, not just because it's Christians, mind you, and that I happen to proudly be a Christian, mind you, but because it would be offensive if this was any other group of people. Seemingly the only person in the media to notice this and to also take offense to it was Tucker Carlson, who bravely decided to say something about it. Palestine, Carlson thought, was no different than any other country's Christians. Having been on the site to the horrors of the Iraq War, Carlson was understandably averse to foreign conflicts of any kind, but particularly the devastation they caused to all in the wake of them. When Carlson spoke with Isaac, who also serves as a director for Bethlehem's Institute for Peace and Justice, it was the first time a major broadcaster had taken into account a Christian lens of the Israel-Palestine conflict. Isaac has, for his entire career, been a critic of the government of Israel for their mistreatment of Christians in the region, which had been heightened after the events of October 7th and Israel's response to it. 2 months after, at Christmas, Isaac had gone viral for his church's nativity scene called, quote, Church Christ in the Rubble, which had outraged people who were fervent supporters of the Israeli government. Quote, If Christ were to be born today, Isaac stated, he would be born under the rubble and Israeli shelling. End quote. Even after the initial blowback, Isaac did not back down. He continued to travel the world to speak at anti-apartheid conferences. He urged then-President Joe Biden on X to end the war in Gaza. Nowhere was this more true than his interview with Carlson. In their conversation, Isaac crossed what many had dubbed the uncrossable line. He accused Israel of committing a genocide in Gaza and rebuked America's Christians and the world's Christians for not doing as Jesus said to do and advocating for a peace and end to their suffering in the region, as he commanded in his Sermon on the Mount. Even for a Tucker Carlson interview, the after effect after this airing was, to put it mildly, explosive. Carlson and Isaac were both smeared as anti-Semites, labels they still carry today, similarly to people such as Candace Owens and Dave Smith, also professing Christians who had commented on this issue. Anyone, particularly any Christian, who had the nerve to question Israel's government were tarred and feathered seemingly on the spot. This put an interesting twist on what was the most underrated parts and underreported parts of most of these people's champions, Donald Trump. Trump unquestionably has been the most pro-Israel president in modern American history. Trump, a person who highly valued loyalty and strong alliances, went to bat for Israel constantly. This, plus the fact that his daughter and her family were strictly both Jewish converts, put Trump strictly in the camp of supporting Israel by default. And this is not necessarily the wrong position to take, by the way. I'm a Christian. Jesus was a Jew. I believe that when the world ends, that is where Jesus is coming back to redeem the world and throw all the rest of the people into hell. If anyone should be in the camp of a Christian Zionist and supporter of Israel, it's a Bible-thumping evangelical Christian such as myself. This is my default position also. However, there's a caveat to this. A great explanation of this came from Charlie Kirk, another strongly supportive Israel defender and evangelical Christian. When on a college campus, Kirk was approached by a young man who wanted to join the military. That same young man, however, had reservations. How could he go to war for a country that supported things like abortion, transgender surgeries on children, the impoverishment of the working class, things that he and his values were diametrically opposed to? It was a good question. Kirk's response was the correct one. When you go to war, you don't go to war on behalf of your country's government, whose policies can change with the snap of a finger. On the contrary, you go to war on behalf of your country itself and the values and principles it holds. In essence, you must die on a hill for your values, for the permanent things, the things that the government has no right to trespass on in any form or fashion. Therefore, the position we should all take on any issue, but especially one this hot button, is the following. Nothing is by default. We must question everything. All alliances, strategies, structures, and institutions must be examined with unflinching honesty. If nothing is talked about in this way, then nothing ever gets done. This is not to say we should burn everything down just to burn everything down. That's stupid. But to say that nothing should be burned down, that all is just fine and dandy, is equally so as well. And the reality is, when you look into America's relationship with the current government of Israel, particularly in terms of foreign aid and intelligence, there is a lot of smoke to that fire. Why exactly do we give Israel so much money? A country is only sovereign if it can defend itself. Why is a lobby on behalf of a foreign government allowed to so heavily influence our politicians and fund their political campaigns? We'd freak out if it were China or Russia. Why is Israel in a vacuum any different? Why did the incoming Trump administration get so much cash from people such as Miriam Adelson, for example, who is heavily tied in with the Israeli government? Why is Palantir, the biggest black box tech startup in the world, whose technology is being used by the Israeli government to turn Gaza into a parking lot via drone technology, getting a blank check from Donald Trump to fuse all government data into a centralized location? These are all incredibly legitimate questions, particularly given the state of our own country. Los Angeles just underwent a civil war with foreign nationals waving foreign flags in one of America's most iconic cities while throwing Molotov cocktails into windshields of cars. A record number of fentanyl is still coming across our border. A national state of emergency has been declared about the level of homelessness across our various urban centers. Americans generally are still rightfully distrustful of every level of government, whether their preferred candidate is in office or not. The age-old question remains. Can we be truly America first, the agenda that Donald Trump promised his ever-loyal MAGA acolytes, if we prioritize the well-being of another nation above our own nation? The answer? No. An emphatic no. We have been so blinded by various outside influences and interests that America's near blind loyalty and bipartisan, mind you, support of the government of Israel has tainted our perception of it. Has anti-Semitism rapidly spiked, particularly online, since October 7th? Yes. Has there been crimes against people strictly because they are Jewish? Yes. Do Jews feel unsafe on college campuses because of their ethnic heritage and religious faith? I'm sure they do. These are all things to consider, obviously, because no American should feel this way, no matter who they are, what they look like, or how they choose to practice their religious faith. Yet these have been used as excuses as to us not being able to inquire into the basic facts of what is going on in the Middle East and how complicit America is in it. When we see a child blown to pieces on X or a hospital bombed on TikTok, we're told that what's in front of our eyes isn't actually happening. When we see a piece of old video or transcript about NATO led by the U.S. doing Israel's bidding to run roughshod over the Middle East, we're told to plug our ears and say la la la. When we are asked about hatred against Jews, how hatred against Jews is different from hatred against any other group, we're told we're bad people for even raising the question. This has quieted most people, which has allowed the trend to continue even further down the slippery slope. But now, almost 2 years after the horrific events of October 7th, people are finally starting to see the light. I should start by stating the obvious again. There are anti-Semites, such as Nick Fuentes to name one, out there. They are using this entire catastrophe both from a figurative and literal sense to gin up hatred against Jews. This is something that we as Americans should be against in every scenario. Hating Jewish people because they're Jewish is wrong. It has always been wrong. It will never not be wrong. That said, however, there is a reason why conspiracy theorists and legitimate anti-Semites are gaining traction. We didn't just get this rampant rush of anti-Semitism or any other form of hatred simply out of nowhere. Like any other scenario like it, it is a malicious case of cause and effect. The reason why this is happening, why everything around the entire Israel issue, particularly in the MAGA movement, is so crazy, is because of a lack of one thing. The one thing that keeps everything grounded. The truth. The absence of truth about the things that matter is the only reason things like conspiracies can exist. Whenever there is a lack of clarity about anything, there is always someone lurking in the shadows to take advantage of that opportunity, particularly when it comes to things as sensitive as the United States' relationship with Israel, for example, and Israel's actions in the West Bank. There is no room for error here. Things must be laid out plainly for people to see, or else there will be bad actors that seize on that opportunity to take advantage of that opportunity. And they have. The U.S.-Israel relationship and everything that has gone south recently has been the biggest self-inflicted wound the MAGA movement has suffered in its history. It has the potential to completely tear it apart, to stall all positive momentum that this populist nationalist movement has going for it. If it does, it will be the biggest wasted political opportunity in a century. We cannot allow it to happen, come hell or high water. But to do so, we must begin to have an honest conversation about America's government and its relationship with Israel's government. Half-baked conspiracy theories and truths will no longer do it for people who have been devoid of both for so long. Without the full, unvarnished truth about the U.S.-Israel relationship, we cannot forge a relationship that is built on good, healthy boundaries, respect, and trust. If it gets ugly, good. That is what must be done if the truth is to reign supreme. I have dubbed this problem, not just with Israel, mind you, but with the lack of truth throughout our institutions, as the conspiracy death spiral. The conspiracy death spiral, put simply, is what our country has been enveloped in for the last 5 years. Is systemic racism actually real? Was the 2020 election stolen? Was COVID a bioweapon? Is Elon Musk running the government? Is Benjamin Netanyahu controlling Trump like a puppet? None of these are constructive conversations in a healthy society, but there is a reason we're having them. That reason, the truth and the lack thereof, is the only reason as to why these vast gulfs are allowed to take place within our country between what is actually going on and what other, more self-interested parties simply want to be true. We cannot run a country this way. We must accept that and do everything we can to fix it. But it's not just the truth. We know we'll never get the full version of that, unfortunately. What's more harmful, and why so many conspiracies, both true and untrue, are allowed to run wild, is that this lack of truth has all but infected our institutions. Our institutions have become so poisoned by lies that no one can rely on them anymore for getting people any sort of truth. And this is a catastrophe and something we should be absolutely furious about. With no cultural institutions to uphold credibility, we have no leg to stand on when it comes to any sort of truth, which is what is leading to our conspiracy death spiral. If our government and its surrounding institutions can't even tell us the truth about whether or not Israeli intelligence is infiltrating our government, or why Jeffrey Epstein was able to obtain access to his wealth, or even on the effects of fluoride in our teeth and in our water, Why should we expect it in any other vein of possibility? It is not anti-Israel to say that I don't want Israel influencing my government and my country. It is not anti-Semitic to say that turning Gaza into a parking lot is immoral. It is not coded Jew hatred to say that taking out the Ayatollah is bad for American interests. These are the truth, and these are facts. It's about time we start speaking them, and loudly. Okay, so why are conspiracies happening? And this episode is going to be very focused on the Israel situation and what's going on, what's not going on, what's happening basically. But I want to go broad before we go narrow, and I want to get into kind of why conspiracies happen. And to do that, I want to tell a story. So it was about a year ago, actually. It was around September. I think it was September. Yeah, it was September of last year. So September of 2024, I took my first vacation in 6 years. So I took my first vacation since I really had become an adult, quote unquote. I was out in the world doing whatever. I was broke for most of that time, and I finally had enough money to throw down to go on vacation somewhere. And I said, well, where do I want to go? And I've had the luxury of traveling to a lot of places. I've been all around the United States. I've been in Europe twice. That was all great. I knew I was going to Europe in February of this year at the time that I booked my vacation. And so I'm like, I could go to New York, I could go to Boston. Like September, it was like, in my opinion, it's too late for like Mexico or like any place tropical, like Hawaii or the Caribbean or something like that. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of out. It's like, what is a good place to visit in the fall? Like, where is a good place to go inside in autumn? And my choice was to go to Jackson Hole, was to go to Wyoming. I had first heard about Jackson Hole actually in a Jack Carr novel, actually, in The Terminal List. By the way, his new show is coming out on Amazon Prime later this month, the sequel to the prelude to The Terminal List. I highly recommend watching it. Dark Wolf with Chris Pratt and Taylor Kitsch and all those guys. Antoine Fuqua is directing it. It's going to be awesome. Terminal List is great. If you haven't watched it or read the book, more importantly, watch it, read the book, etc. And so I'm like, okay, like Jackson Hole sounds cool. I've never been to that part of the country. I'd never been to kind of like that plains, middle of America, like, not Midwest, but not the West Coast either. And I heard it was beautiful, and I looked it up, and I was like, oh my gosh, this place is so gorgeous. And so I fly out to Jackson Hole, and I basically just unplug for a couple of days. I don't bring anything related to my then coaching business at the time. I don't write. I don't think I even brought a computer at that point. I may have had like my Slack downloaded or something, but I didn't even really get that there. I just kind of, I remember Jackson Hole has a small airport, very small airport. I think you can only connect to like Salt Lake City and I think like Los Angeles or maybe Seattle or New York or something like that. But it's only like 10 gates. It's very small. It's very remote. And you had to take kind of like a biplane out there, or not a biplane, it's not that small, but like a very small jet out to, I connected in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'd actually never been to the airport, nice airport. I got a Jack Carr autograph book there, so that was nice. So shout out to Jack Carr, episode dedicated to Jack Carr. So I go up and I book, I think I stayed out there for like 4 nights or something like that. Go out, awesome. If you haven't been to Jackson Hole, visit Jackson Hole. Did a whole day Yellowstone tour, got to see, bison and, elk and wolves and all this kind of stuff. And it's terribly expensive, by the way. Really, really good food, but really, really expensive food. Like a scoop of ice cream is like $11 up there or something crazy like that. But I bought it, and so it was good ice cream. So there you go. So buy the ice cream up there if you're there. And so I was up there, and I remember I wanted to one of the things I wanted to explore, I wanted to unplug, I wanted to get out in nature and see things. And I was like, great, mountains, all that kind of stuff was awesome. And I remember, I hadn't had a lot of wild game while I was up there. And I, basically looked up. I was like, okay, like, is there like a steakhouse, something adjacent to a steakhouse up there? And I found this place called the Gun Barrel. And it's Gun Barrel Saloon. So if you're in Jackson Hole, if you're going to Wyoming, go to the Gun Barrel, give them some business. Best old fashioned I've ever had in my life was at the Gun Barrel up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Great old fashioned up there. And I've had many old fashions. And so I remember I think it's like my second to last night I'm up there. I think I just went, whitewater rafting or something that morning, and I'm walking down. It's like a mile and a half away, and it's it's not cold, but it's not warm either. So I'm like, okay, I'll put a jacket on, I'll put a pair of jeans on, I'll walk, and I'll get some bison and some steak and elk and all that kind of stuff, and I'll just go down and I'll have a nice meal. And so I'm walking, and by the way, the cell phone reception is awful in terms of Jackson Hole, which is awesome. It's not good. And really, you can hardly get reception even in like your hotels and Wi-Fi. It's just not great out there because it's really in the middle of nowhere. It's in Wyoming. And so I think Wyoming might be, I might have to fact check myself on this, it might be the least populous state in the entire country. It's up there at least. And so it's like there's Wi-Fi's not good out there, or internet's not good out there, so which is fine by me. So I'm walking and I get a text from a friend who was, he's younger than me by about like 6 years, very close friend of mine, known his family for my entire life essentially. And he texts me randomly, and we text sometimes, but every time it's like, oh, he texted me about this. And so I'm walking to this to the Gun Barrel, to this steakhouse, and he texts me like, hey Sam, I want to ask, can I just ask you like a genuine question? And I said, sure, like go ahead and ask me a question. I don't care. And so he said, I don't know what to think about anything anymore. That was what he told me. This is a 20-year-old young man at the time in college, where all the quote unquote smart people are, right? Where he's supposed to learn how the world works or whatever. And he texted me, he's like, I don't know what to think about anything. I don't know what's true. I don't know what's false. I don't know whatever. He just, like I said, turned 20. He was going to vote in the election. He didn't know who to vote for. He didn't like all this kind of stuff. He's like, what's going on? And so I was drinking throughout this entire time. I think it was like 2 old fashions and very strong old fashions. And I don't drink all that much, so it doesn't really take much to get me to that place. And so I remember I just went on this like big like text, like boom, here, do this, do whatever. But what really stuck out to me about that conversation was that it was very honest. He came to me with a very humble posture. It was the most honest conversation I'd had in recent memory, for the simple reason that he admitted out loud the problem that no one wants to address. And that problem that no one wants to address is why the narrative on so many things has gone so sideways so quickly. Why can't I find out information about the most basic parts of an election, for example? Or why is the narrative so fractured and so many people are saying different things about this, and they're saying this isn't true, but this is true, and that's not true, and this is true, and like what's going on here? And I thought that was a very good question, because I think most people kind of struggle with getting the truth from certain people. And I'm like, well, where can we even find these things? And I think this is the biggest reason that conspiracies and all the other thoughts about various happenings in the world are flourishing right now. And a lot of those conspiracies, mind you, turned out to be true, but there are a lot of these kind of wild, like you get, like Candace Owens and Alex Jones. This is a lot of wild stuff, but a lot of true stuff also. But the reason why this kind of breakdown in communication is happening, and the reason why all of these kind of wild ideas are going so nuts, is because of a mass failure of our institutions. This is why I'm able to do this show, by the way. If people were getting the truth and getting solid opinions from mainstream institutional sources, I wouldn't have opportunity to have an audience. But I do, and it's growing, and people are liking the content for the most part. Still get some negative stuff, but that's fine. Who doesn't? But the point of all of this is that when Eric Weinstein has broken down this so well, so many times, it's really because of him that I think I'm able to do this. And so when people, like my grandmother, for example, when she asks me, like, what do I do for a living? And I tell her what I do, I'm like, well, there's a market for that? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because no one's doing communication right. No one's doing media right. No one's doing, just through my pen, no one's doing anything right in terms of getting all that stuff, down to earth. And so the point of all of this is when our institutions become dysfunctional, mostly, by the way, because of incompetent leadership. That's the reason why all this is happening, because of the leadership of all of these institutions, and they're not doing their jobs, and they're making sure that the information is not getting out in the proper fashion. And then they get caught because there's more information out there. There's more platforms out there. They're saying, hey, I don't think you're telling the truth. I don't think you're being honest. I don't think you're doing this right, that right, whatever. And what they do then is they try to cover up their own blemishes by lying about them. And they spin different narratives, and they say, well, don't believe your lying eyes. Like there was this hilarious, Tim Dillon did a great segment on this the other day about, I think it was New York Magazine, like the ultimate, like chattering class, like, bourgeois paper of record inside of our country. They did this profile on like Jeffrey Epstein about 20 years ago that was just glowing, and like, oh my God, Jeffrey Epstein is so great. And so when they do this and they try to cover up their own blemishes by lying about the things that they cover. And when they get called out on those lies, as so many have been over the last 10 years especially, really ever since, Trump was a big catalyst to this. This is going to happen anyway with the rise of podcasts and YouTube shows and things like that with, Breaking Points and Joe Rogan and all these other people. So it causes distrust among the broader populace. That's why all of this stuff happens. And when you cause distrust among the broader populace, when this distrust is filtered through and disseminated among the broader populace, particularly among a cultural institution of anything, whether it's media or the medical complex or like AI or technology or political stuff or whatever, there is a thought that starts to spring up when you start to spot. It's kind of like it's a game of whack-a-mole, essentially. And there's a thought that starts to spring up. Is this happening with all of our institutions? Okay, well, the media lied about this. And, what if the tech algorithms are biased? Well, wait a minute. What if the people that are coding the tech algorithms are biased? What if they're lying to me? And then if they're lying to me, what about their relationship with the hardware companies and this and that? And then you get this kind of, again, the conspiracy death spiral. This is how all this happens. And, we just had, for example, and this is the thing that's so dangerous about lies, because, for example, we had this, guy who I looked up to for a very long time was a guy named Tim Kennedy, who lives and goes to my boxing gym. And I know a lot of people that know Tim. I've never met Tim. I boxed them once on the other side of the gym. I didn't get to talk to him. But, Tim was under a lot of pressure and a lot of heat about a year ago for saying, a lot of people had very serious accusations about Tim's behavior, that, he stole, he didn't do all the things he said in the military. He lied, stolen valor, the thing that Tim Walz, if you guys remember, that was getting accused of. I don't think Tim Walz has been definitively disproven, but Tim Kennedy was under the same thing. And I was like, well, that couldn't happen, whatever. But Tim did steal valor. He did lie about his military record. He did lie about his military service. And he admitted that on his social media profiles. And so now, as someone who had this perception of Tim Kennedy, I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. Like, if he lied about that, did he lie about taking PEDs in the UFC? Did he lie about what he did with Afghanistan? Are all of his companies kind of shells? Like, what is this? It's this game of whack-a-mole that we're playing with all of these different, institutions. It's like, well, if our media is screwed up, then like what about our churches? What about our local government? What about our mayor? What about our president? Like, it just spirals and snowballs. It's like a cartoon when you push the snowball down the hill. It goes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's the plane that stalls out in midair and is like, just falling out of the sky so rapidly. And it's like, holy smokes, like what do we do about this? And this is why I believe that everything is just completely getting blown out of proportion, why everything is just seemingly so messed up nowadays. And this is why the conspiracy death spiral has happened the way that it has. Because if no one can trust anything, and I mean anything, we're at the point, trust levels across all of our institutions are so low. Congress, the media, tech companies, big business, the banks, your neighbors, the evangelical church, the Catholic Church, like everything, when you can't trust anything, which almost no one trusts, the military, the police, like whatever, you will get a naturally unstable population. And that's not necessarily that hard to figure out, by the way, because if stability comes from consistency, so if you have no consistency across your media, across your military, across your messaging from your political leaders, from your pastor, you're like, hold on a minute. Like there's a massive incongruence. This is a word that my friend and my sales coach, Tristan Seckler, says all the time. My friend Joe Hines says it all the time. Congruency is the most important thing to establish credibility. If you are congruent across all aspects of your life, you don't want to be Johnny Bravo. This is the thing that my Joe says a lot. He says, if you're Johnny Bravo, you've got a big upper body, but you don't work your legs out at all. Okay, are you really fit? Like, are you? Probably not in that way. Like, probably not. And you have reason to doubt about those things. And so this will trickle into every aspect of your life. And it has inside of our cultural life. Like, we don't respect anything. We have no cultural influence behind anything anymore. And it's just insane, dude. Like, and so this is why we seem so quote unquote polarized. This is why, there's anarchy seemingly everywhere, where there's so much bashing of this side and that side of any issue or whatever. This is why no one can seemingly find common ground on anything. And what this does, unfortunately, is it creates this is regardless of political affiliation, of religious faith, of whatever. This is just a human thing. It creates an underclass of bitter and resentful citizens towards their ruling class. And by the way, I've bashed our ruling class several times. I think they're idiots for the most part. But I am not opposed to a ruling class at all. This is something Tucker Carlson talks about a lot too. I'm not opposed to having leaders. I like leadership. I like competent leadership. That's the important thing. I like leaders that know what they're doing. Our leaders, our ruling class, has no idea what they're doing, seemingly on anything. And even the current administration, I don't think they have a really good idea of what they're doing in anything. Like our DOJ seems completely incompetent, for example. I think they all should be fired, every single one of them. And what this does, if people see this for a long time and they see it over and over again across multiple areas and multiple vectors of society, they're like, oh my God. I don't it's like these people are idiots. Why should we listen to them? And then that's when revolution starts happening. That's why you see all these wild threats and this and whatever. And you just don't trust your leaders. And it's not good to not trust your leaders, because if you can't trust your leaders, man, who can you trust? And that's a legitimate question. And I think that we don't have a good answer for it right now in our country, which is why everything seems so screwed up. And I think the biggest example of this is this Jeffrey Epstein wild thing that's happening right now. This is a truly, I think, watershed, just once in a generation type of cultural event that we're witnessing unfold before our very eyes. I think this whole Jeffrey Epstein debacle by the Trump administration is the biggest outgrowth of this conspiracy death spiral that we've maybe ever seen ever, which is really saying something if you really put behind it. If you see all of the lies that the government has told about, the Kennedy assassination, for example, or Iran-Contra, or, all the wars, the terror wars and everything like that. It's like this is a really, really impactful thing. And I think this is the reason why it's hitting people so differently, and the reason why, Trump has really stepped in it with the people who are most loyal to him, is that this is not a faraway issue. This is not a faraway issue at all. Because, when we got lied into the terror wars in Iraq and Afghanistan by our neocon industrial war complex, by the military industrial complex and the media that is involved with that, it was very far away. And we're like, okay, I've never been to Iraq. I'm probably not going to go to Afghanistan. What do I care? Okay, we had bad people come and blow up the Twin Towers and the Pentagon and kill 3,000 people. Yeah, let's go kill those people. And people are like, okay, that sounds fine. But why I think the Epstein thing is different is because this crime that Jeffrey Epstein committed, and we'll get to the whole intelligence asset thing in a second, but just the crime of human trafficking and sexually abusing not only women, which is bad enough, but minor women, children that were around the age of 14, by the most powerful people in the world, and orchestrated by Jeffrey Epstein, by Ghislaine Maxwell, all these other people that were involved in this. It is because unfortunately, everybody knows that everybody knows someone that's gone through that. Unfortunately, everybody knows someone who, especially I think among the younger generation, has known someone, particularly women, that have been sexually abused. I know multiple, and I'm not proud to say that because it's awful. And I've talked with them about this, and there are many that have done that, and many of men, by the way, but I think it's more common among women. Although it's common in men, but it's a lot more common in women for obvious reasons, I think. And so a powerful person abuses sexually a younger woman is universally regarded as the most immoral thing someone could do, and it's local. For example, when some guy goes to prison and he's a chomo, he's a child molester, those gangs wipe that guy out in a second. Because they know, in prison, they have a system of morality that's congruent to the outside population. And so people want justice. People want scalps. And they should want scalps. It's like the start of Inglourious. It's that monologue that Brad Pitt delivers in Inglourious Basterds. And I want my scalps. I want scalps. I want people to go to prison for this. The vast majority of Americans, this is not a political issue. This is a cultural issue. This is why everyone's upset about it. It's universally frowned upon to sexually abuse young women. Period. By the most powerful people in the world as well. And what has happened with this rollout of the Epstein stuff, and the lying about the Epstein stuff, the cover-up of the Epstein stuff from the the Pam Bondi giving all the MAGA influencers the binders and then them being nothing burgers. And it is the greatest case of over promise and under deliver that I have ever witnessed, ever, of anything. And maybe it will ever witness. Like, this is really bad. Like, it is absolutely wild to me. With all of the smart people that I believe are inside of the Trump administration and the Justice Department, by the way. I don't think Pam Bondi's stupid. But it is absolutely wild at how much the current administration has bungled this from top to bottom. And let's just go through some of the examples. So you have Kash Patel, who I like in theory, who I liked before this, and I think is kind of like, whoa, now I'm not sure on Kash Patel. Clearly lying to Joe Rogan, clearly lying to Maria Bartiromo on Fox News. I watched that. I remember it was I was at a wedding up in Sulphur Springs, a town up north of Dallas. It's right on the border of Texas and maybe Oklahoma. I was watching that interview and I was looking at Kash Patel and I'm like, this is a different person from the guy who was outside of the administration like 6 months ago. Like I don't know what's going on here. Like what's going on here? Like Pam Bondi blatantly lying about child pornography on television. The binder stunt. Trump lashing out at reporters. Like, we're still talking about the Epstein thing. Yes, we're still talking about the Epstein thing, dummy. Yes, of course we are. Because you haven't given us an answer. You said you wouldn't give us an answer, and we have not gotten an answer. Yes, we're still pissed about it. Yes, we are. And we will not stop being pissed about it, by the way. And so, and the big thing is like, who was Jeffrey Epstein? Who was he working for? Who funded him? And who is involved with this? And there are lots of things being thrown out about this whole situation. Lots of stuff. And it's very hard to digest. You're drinking through a fire hose every time you poke this bear. But here's what's really going on. I think this is very clear at this point. This is the neat and skinny of the Epstein situation as far as I'm concerned. Jeffrey Epstein, most likely, has not been proven yet by any documentation, but based on all the things that we know now, I think this is clearly the case. And I've thought this for a while, by the way. Eric Weinstein, again, opened my eyes to this, and I said, okay, that makes sense. It's the only thing that really does make sense. Because what Eric Weinstein said was that Jeffrey Epstein was a construct. He met Jeffrey Epstein one time. He's like, this is not a real person. He called his wife right after and said, I just met a construct. I just met a projection of what someone wanted them to be. And so the question is, okay, who constructed Jeffrey Epstein? And the answer is most likely a foreign intelligence service, probably with the help of ours, the CIA, with all the other people that, the black box, everything that Tulsi Gabbard oversees. By the way, she's at fault for this as well. So Jeffrey Epstein most likely was an intelligence asset. He was an intel asset. He was a spy that was used by multiple different spy agencies across the world, including the CIA, including the Mossad. He was connected with Ghislaine Maxwell. Her father was a guy named Robert Maxwell, was a media mogul and a known asset and helper of the Mossad. He had, I think, 4 Mossad directors at his funeral or something like that. Deep connections with Israeli intelligence, who are very good at what they do. The CIA is very good at what they do as well, namely kill people and start wars and everything like that, overthrow world governments, but that's beside the point. And so the question is, okay, if we have a smoking gun, which I believe that we do, and we have multiple smoking guns, I think, then why has the smoking gun not been released to the public yet? Why have we not seen who's on the client list yet? And that's, I think, why you're seeing all of this hysteria, this cover-up from the Trump administration. I think this is what's actually happening. So I am of the opinion, just an opinion, but it's my opinion. I don't think this is wrong. I think this is right. I believe that what is inside the Jeffrey Epstein client list, the people that are named inside of there, maybe including the President of the United States, probably definitely including a former president, if I can say that, with President Clinton, is so damning, oh my gosh, Dan Bongino even said this the other day, I will never be the same after I know what I know. I don't know what that means, but I think it means this. Whatever is inside that client list, including the names that are on there, the governments that are affiliated, the intelligence services, the financial institutions, that when it comes out, the entire world order, as we know it, has the potential to crumble. Everything is going to fall apart if I believe what is in that Epstein file, the actual Epstein file, is in that Epstein file. Everything's going to fall apart. Everything is going to explode. There are many powerful people in politics, finance, arms trading, world intelligence, royalty, etc., that are tied up in this thing very, very deeply. That's very evident. Prince Andrew, the royal family, is tied up in this. The Mossad is tied up in this. The CIA is tied up in this. The U.S. government is tied up in this. Hollywood is tied up in this. And so this whole Epstein thing was a massive honeypot operation to centralize control and power over the most influential people in the world, both inside and outside of government, to unelected bureaucrats, namely our intel services, who actually run our government for the most part. It is not Congress. It is not even the judicial system. It is the deep state intelligence apparatus, the intelligence community that runs our country. And it has for a very long time. This is nothing new, by the way. So, because of this, I believe that Israel, the Israeli government, not Jews, not the Israeli populace, the Israeli government, the Mossad, their ruling class, and their interests around the world in the Trump administration, in lobbying, in finance, in whatever, they're putting massive pressure on Trump and his cabinet, many of whom are very, very loyal to Israel. So much so that they might be bought by the Israeli government. I think many of them are. They're putting massive pressure on Donald Trump and his cabinet. And many of them are bought off. Many of them are. And I think that'll come out too. And they are saying, you keep that list quiet. You repress it. You get it down. You stuff it down. You blow it up if possible. It cannot come out. That government apparatus, the Mossad, the Israeli government, and by the way, the U.S. government, I should say that as well, our government, the evil people that are in our government. There are very many evil people in our government. That's all going to come out too. They're saying, if you release this, there will be hell to pay. There will be hell to pay. And there will be. So they're putting massive pressure on Donald Trump and his administration, the DOJ most specifically, who controls all of this, the FBI, our intel services, with Tulsi Gabbard at the helm, because they know that it will tip the scales in terms of Israel's standing in the world, including the war in Gaza that's going on right now, including all the stuff they want to do with Iran, including all the infiltration of our politics. They know that if Israel and their government and the Mossad are involved in the Jeffrey Epstein thing, in fact, might have financed the Jeffrey Epstein thing, it's over for them on the world stage. Israel's already kind of at a teetering point right now with a lot of people in the world. They have lost a lot of credibility on the world stage. If this comes out that the Epstein thing was financed and worked by them, it is over for that country. It is over for that government. And it is over, by the way, for the criminals in our own government who are helping the criminals in the Israeli government. I believe they have threatened President Trump. I believe they have threatened President Trump's family. I believe they have threatened the families and the sitting members of his cabinet and their families as well, which is why Donald Trump is behaving the way that he is. I believe they threatened his family. I believe they threatened the families of many people inside of the administration, which is why he's lashing out at people. Trump never does that, which is why he's reprimanded the media and he's made fun of them and stuff. But like in terms of like the wild yelling at the media, like he doesn't do that like at all. He mostly just insults them and puts them down. But now he's like getting frantic about it. And I've been watching Donald Trump ever since he came into politics. He's never behaved that way as he is about this issue with Jeffrey Epstein and with the Israel situation. They've threatened his family, clearly, in my opinion. That'll come out too. Hopefully it will. God willing, it will. But, however, when you say this out loud, when you say that Jeffrey Epstein might have been working for the Mossad, when you pull he might have been an intel asset card, what people have done is shut down that conversation. Oh, you can't talk, like Jeffrey Epstein was an intelligence asset. No, he wasn't. What? No. It's some anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. You can't talk about that. What? Hold on one second. We have people in our culture, in our government, in our independent media, by the way, that are shutting down this conversation, that are attempting to shut down this conversation. Bill O'Reilly, Barry Weiss, Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, to name a few. They're shutting this down. They're trying to quiet the Epstein story as some kind of anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, which is ridiculous. It is completely ridiculous. I just read a story this morning. Barry Weiss, who runs a neocon propaganda outlet called the Free Press, joining CBS. Why is that? She wants to change the mainstream narrative on this issue. On the Israel issue, and I have nothing. Barry can worship the way she wants to. I know she's a very religious Jew, very pro-Israel, fine. But you cannot hide the truth on this. That makes you immoral. Anybody who attempts to cover this, who says that it's some kind of crackpot conspiracy theory, they are a villain in this scenario. Everybody, no matter what their political affiliation, what whatever, if they are trying to cover this up in the media, especially, they are a villain. Why? Because this is a matter of justice. Period. As I mentioned earlier, it is not okay in any circumstance to have young women trafficked, raped, sexually assaulted, molested around the world by the most powerful people in the world. It is not okay. And anybody who tries to say that it's not a big deal, that we should just cover this up and look the other way, they're a villain in this story. They are the problem. This is a matter of justice. And anyone that gets away in the way of that and away with that is the enemy. They are the enemy of the American people, of free speech, of these women that have been so mistreated and so assaulted and so aggrieved by this monster that is controlled by several united interests across our world. And we need to name names. We need to call these people out because this is a matter of justice. And if justice is not served in this instance, why would it ever be served again? That's why the Epstein story matters. And that's why we should all be furious, as I am, about this. And I think what makes me the most upset about this whole Israel situation is the way that certain, Christians are talking about this. Like it's the way that basically there is like it's just I don't even want to go. I'm going to go here. This is fine. So, Joel Berry, who's the editor of the Babylon Bee, who I liked for a while. I saw him on the great Owen Strand's podcast. I love Dr. Strand. And so I saw him on Owen Strand's show once, and then essentially he's been viciously pro-Israel. Evangelical Christian. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. And so he put out maybe the most insane tweet that I've ever seen in my entire life, I think last week. Because last week, if people have seen the news, the Israeli government bombed the only Catholic church in Gaza. The only Catholic church in Gaza. And I forget there was a gentleman who was in the running to become the Pope before Pope Leo got inducted as the Pope inside the Catholic Church. I think Pizzaballa, I think is how you pronounce him. There is a high-ranking Catholic cardinal in Gaza right now. And the Israeli government sent a missile and blew up that Catholic church. And what Joel Berry said is that, hey, those Christians, they're no different than Hamas. I'll put it as the thumbnail for people to read it. They support Hamas. They're asking for it. And I'm like, that is the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. How dare you, as a Christian, say that people who profess their faith in Jesus Christ in a place like Gaza, where it is not okay to say that most of the time, that they're asking to get blown up by the Israeli government. How dare you say something like that? How dare you, evil person, to say something like that? I mean, that's the epitome of a girl asking to get assaulted if she's walking down the street at night and revealing clothing. And this rise of like this Christian Zionism, this kind of like this zeal against we have to defend the Israeli government at all costs. I don't care what they do to the Palestinians. I don't care what they do, whatever. I think Hamas is evil. I think they all should be wiped out, maybe, probably. Yes, they all should be wiped out. I don't like killing people, but if they're going to kill other people and they need to be stopped, we need to do what we need to do, probably. And I hate that because I hate death in every single way. I don't like the death penalty. I don't like war. I don't like abortion. I don't like any of it. Hamas is evil, and we should try to get rid of them. But also, blowing up a Catholic church, the only Catholic church, when there is a sitting cardinal trying to help those people in Gaza, is an evil thing to do. And this issue is not only divided only the MAGA right, but the Christian right. The MAGA right is divided because of our opposition to foreign conflict and our Christian and non-Christian counterparts. It's one of the biggest fractures in the MAGA movement right now. But like anything, it is the Christians that have to take the lead here on how this is going to go if we're going to get this right. The Christians are going to need to be the ones who lead here morally on the way that we handle all this stuff, the Epstein thing, whatever, etc. The war in Gaza, Christians need to take the lead here because clearly this is not going well. Jewish people and Muslim people in that part of the world will never get along ever. Ever. They're bound by the laws of their religion to go at each other. And it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing. So Christians need to be the voice of reason here. This is why Christianity is the one true faith. It is the only way to a rich and prosperous life. Because they are not bound by law, they are bound by morality. So, the question that I've been really ruminating over in my head, I'm really agonized over this, is that whether Christians have an obligation to support Israel, because I've heard both. And so, I saw this video by Mark Driscoll, Pastor Mark Driscoll, a man I look up to a lot, and he had a very interesting take on this. And so, and I think it's the right take. And I don't know really, I think Pastor Mark is pro-Israel, and that's fine. Pastor Mark can have his opinions, and I think he bases everything in theology, so I mean, I might be wrong about this. But what Pastor Mark said is that in general, loyalty is not a thing. There is no such thing as loyalty except to God. Be loyal to your God. Don't be loyal to man. And then that's correct. If you are a Christian, if someone is not loyal to your God, you cannot be loyal to them. Period. You can love them. You can wish them well. But to be loyal to them, to trust them, to excuse their sin, no. No. Not okay. You are loyal to God first. God is the highest priority in the Christian faith. It is not your wife. It is not your children. It's not your job. It's not your creative works. It's not your political affiliation. Nothing is above God. If someone is off kilt from God, that's what sin is, being out of line with God's plan, with God's law, with God's commandments, you cannot be loyal to yourself, to you, to a political party, to anybody. Therefore, what Christians should be loyal to are those who keep God's commandments, not people who use them as talking points, not the Joel Berrys of the world, that demonic man that says that blowing up Catholics is okay. It's not okay. It's not. Blowing up people isn't okay at all. So although I will say, in a vacuum, Christians should probably support Israel. And in a vacuum, I support Israel. Because Israel is where our religion comes from. That part of the world is where our religion comes from. However, the government of Israel, this is my biggest thing. This is the biggest thing with anybody who gets labeled an anti-Semite seemingly these days. And there are actual anti-Semites out there. I just listened to one on a podcast the other day. He hates Jews. I don't hate Jews. I love Jews. But the government of Israel has become so corrupt, so unconscionable, so much so that they are actively killing Christians and have oppressed multiple Christian populations in that region of the world for years. For years. That we cannot support them, in my view, as a Christian. They're anti-Christianity by the way that they've behaved and the way they're currently behaving. And even people that are really Mike Huckabee, maybe the most pro-Israel person in Donald Trump's cabinet, is saying, whoa, you're bombing a Catholic church now? Can't do that. Michael Knowles, very, very pro-Israel, religious Catholic. I draw the line when you bomb Catholic churches, as we should, by the way. This should not be a confusing issue at all, but we've turned it into one. And it blows my mind. It blows my mind. So, but on the other side as well, we can't support Hamas either, because Hamas wants to murder both Jews and Christians. Hamas does not like Christianity either. They don't like Jewish people. They don't like Christians. I don't think there's an argument about that, to be honest. So, okay, we can't support this current Israeli government. We can't support the Hamas, the Palestinian government. What are we going to do? What should Christians think? So, Christians, again, as Jesus commanded in Matthew 5, it's opening on the Sermon of the Mount, I believe. Blessed be the peacemakers, because they shall inherit the kingdom of God. We must be on the side of peace, on the side of life. Christianity is the religion of life. We are the religion of peace. We do not kill people. It's in our commandments. In fact, if we have a violent thought towards someone, we're told to told the other cheek, to pray for those who persecute you. This is not saying to be passive, to allow sin to come in and corrupt this. But Christians should not be warmongers. We should not seek to blow people up and to cheer on people that are blowing each other up and killing kids. It's not okay. It's not. And again, I want to, this is a big, the quote-unquote pro-life Christians love to talk about being pro-life when it comes to abortion. And I'm for that. I'm one of those people, by the way. I think abortion is the great moral evil in our history of our country. They love to talk about it when it comes to abortion, and good. But when it comes to other pro-life topics, war, the death penalty, goes right out the window. You never hear that discussed, ever. And that is sinful, and that is unrighteous behavior. That is unrighteous to say that. Any Christian who is cheering blowing up a Catholic church is not a Christian. They're not. They have a very warped, twisted view of the faith. Anyone who cheers on the murder of a child, the abuse of a child, abortion, the death penalty, whatever, they're going to have to talk with God about that. That's all I'll say. That's a conversation I don't want to have with God when I die. I would like to be on the right side of that as far as my reading of the Bible is concerned. But I'm telling you, man, there's a conversation to be had with God there, and I don't know if it's going to be a good one, so I'm just going to steer away from it. And I recommend that you do as well. I want to end with this. So, the whole Joel Berry psychopathy, this, and he's one of the biggest purveyors of this woke right op that's going on right now, and it's a total, again, it's a psyop. It's not real, and so I want to just dig into this because this is so stupid, and this is the psyop of the woke right, and this is a supposedly what the woke right is. As far as I'm concerned, no one can define it, but this is my definition of a non-definable term, as it turns out. This is a supposedly leftist strain that institutional and Zionist conservatives, such as the Daily Wire, the Babylon Bee, they propagate all the time against people like Dave Smith, Tucker, Candace, Theo Von, Joe Rogan, Glenn Greenwald, etc., to silence and crush people. The woke right? Really? Really? Because I think, and what the woke right actually is an op by the real woke right. One of the smartest things Tucker's ever said is that what the woke people accuse you of is exactly what they are themselves. The people who accuse you of racism are actually really racist people. The people who are accusing you of sexism are actually very, very sexist. They really don't like women or men. The people who accuse you of being anti-trans are actually the most anti-trans people out there. That's what it is. And he's right about that. So the irony of all of this, summing up that quote, is that this is exactly how the woke left operates. They gin up stories of oppression. You're being anti-Semitic. And some people are, but most people aren't. Tucker is not an anti-Semite. Theo Von is not an anti-Semite. That's ridiculous. It's stupid. They gin up stories of oppression. Oh my gosh, Jewish students are being oppressed on college campuses. It's okay, maybe. But also you said the same thing that about black students when black students were wanting safe spaces. You said that was ridiculous. Why? Why did you change your tune? Maybe it's because it's convenient for them and their narrative. And they use that story of oppression to crush the opposition, which is anti-American. It's anti-Christian to do that. I'm planting my flag there. They are using this, the woke right people, the people who call everyone else the woke right but themselves are actually the woke right. And by the way, this is not, this whole woke right thing is so toxic. It's so bad for everybody. If conservatism is to reign supreme in the future, and it should, because conservatism is the best ideology out there. Conserving things is good. Keeping things pure is good. We need to call this out and say, actually, you're not on the right. You're not conservative. You're a liberal, actually. Joe Barry's a liberal. Attitude says it. He's woke. Ben Shapiro, woke. Barry Weiss, woke. Sean Hannity, woke. All of them. They're the real woke right. James Lindsay, woke. They're the real woke right. 100% are the real woke right. This is a completely unserious claim by people who have been caught so far into an ideological echo chamber that they can't find their head from their ass anymore. Like they're in so deep, they're so obsessed with this ideology that they can't let it go anymore. They can't get out of their own way anymore. And this is leading them to become hysterical, radical, dangerous in all the ways that matter to the future of what value-driven conservatism, value-driven culture looks like in the future. It's not okay. It's not okay what they're doing, corrupting this movement that most Americans want. And we need to call it out. We need to call these people out. And we need to say that this is not okay. You can have a place here, but this behavior is unacceptable. We will not allow this to happen. And we shouldn't allow it to happen. Because, again, it's anti-American, it's anti-Christian, it's anti-conservative. We just can't have it. We just can't. And so if we want to get back to where our values are taking us, we need to understand that, recognize it, and drive forward to make sure that this never happens again. Because it's happening now, and it's not good for anybody. Thank you for watching, everybody. Own the day. Open your mind. I'll see you next week.